Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Sports on Positive Tip podcast. Um, I'm joined by my partner, Kenny Squared. And Kenny, we have got a really interesting show today, right? We're going to talk some NBA.
Yeah, I, I love the Knicks. That's all I'm gonna say right now.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, Kevin Durant, made his debut. Kyrie and Luca working out, sort of. And you've got something interesting to talk about with the whole pitch clock thing in baseball, right?
Yeah, spring training is well underway now, and it's definitely like the topic of the day right now is the pitch clock.
Yes, it is. And and so we are going to get into though some serious topics having to do with the world of college sports and just three major things that have happened relatively recently. And we're going to pick that apart and ask ourselves, why are these things happening? Why are college students walking around with guns and everything, man?
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy.
It is.
We'll
Yeah.
have to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we got some inspiration. So you ready to do this?
Let's do it.
All right. Yeah, sorry about that. And I'll make sure we kind of fix that. And so Ken, I want to jump in right away because I wanted to really dive into the whole thing that's happening in college sports, and it's just kind of unfolding before our eyes here in three different places, and I'm sure there's probably more that we just haven't heard about. But first, man, we gotta talk some NBA because both you and I are lifelong Knicks fans and lifelong suffering Knicks fans. You poor guy have never seen a championship. At least I remember one. It's at 1973. I don't remember as well the first one. You at least remember, or do you, the one trip to the finals in '99? Maybe. Do you remember that at all?
Yeah, I remember it. I don't really think I definitely wasn't following it the same way at that point baseball, but I
Right.
do remember it a little bit.
Okay. Okay. Um, and so what are you thinking? I'll leave the space open for you. By the way, we're going to a Nick game on Tuesday night against Charlotte. So that should be
Oh,
fun. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I haven't been to the Garden all year, so that should be a lot of fun. So two-part question for you. How are you feeling about the Knicks? And then I'm really curious, are the Cavs feeling anything here with the Knicks, really moving up in the standings here now, 10 games over 500. So how are you feeling about this team?
um, I at honestly, there were times this week that I kind of felt, oh wow, is this the best I felt about a Knicks team since like Jeff Van Gundy was the coach? Um, that might be a little extreme because they
Yeah.
did have a really good season. What was that, 2012, 13,
Uh-huh.
somewhere around there. Um, so definitely like since then, like it kind of seems like this team continues to grow, even despite RJ Barrett's had his struggles this year. I mean, Jalen Brunson is Eastern Conference Player of the Month in February, 27 points a game. Team was 9-2. Um, like it's crazy to see how much he's emerged as a star. Because like I like the signing when he signed, but I was also thinking, well, he's like kind of still that like second tier, like maybe he's like a borderline all star, but he continues to emerge and he continues to grow. Like, would you really be that surprised if he's like maybe not an all-star starter next year because you still have guys like Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, guys like that. But like he's really kind of grown in his own. What I'm really, really hoping right now, um, more personal reasons, I would love for a Cavs Knicks first round. Because that means I can actually go and see a game.
I know
Um,
you. Yeah.
and like how crazy would that be if I was able to see the Yankees play the Guardians in the playoffs and then less than a year later see the Knicks play the Cavs in the
Yeah.
playoffs too. Um, honestly, there's still not a ton of buzz with this Cavs team, and I can't for the life of me figure out why. Um, like it seems like even like with spring training, like there's people already kind of hyped for the Guardians opening day. Like a little bit more than last year. I think because they made the playoffs, because they won the division, I think there's a lot more like excitement there. But
Hmm.
like it seems like maybe it's just because like for the most part, the Cavs are kind of the not the focus of Cleveland. But once they hit the playoffs, there's probably going to be a little bit more excitement. So give it like a month or so. Um, but there isn't like that trepidation or that nervousness. Um, but like it looks like maybe you're looking at a Cavs Knicks first round, which would be a lot of fun because I think like Donovan Mitchell has shown that he is like that true all-star talent. He's really kind of embraced the team, and also like a lot of those guys that around him continue to progress, like the Evan Mobleys of the world, Darius Garland, guys like that. But like either way, like if you are say it'll probably end up being Milwaukee, would you want to face either of those two teams?
Oh,
Teams that got nothing to lose. I
yeah.
look at like a team like Cleveland too. You've got great interior defense. Like you get Giannis out of the paint. Like what do you got? And
Hmm.
also like I know he kind of solved it with winning the championship, but he's still not amazing at the free throw line.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
don't know. Like it could get very interesting because usually there's like you never really see like a giant upset or like this crazy Cinderella run. Like, let's be honest, would you like there's probably about like 5 or 6 teams that'll probably be like your NBA finals teams. But there's usually a team that like kind of sneaks into like the conference finals or like I think of when Dallas was upset by Golden State back when Baron Davis was the star there.
Yeah.
Like you usually
Yeah.
see a couple of those every single year. So I don't know, it'll be interesting.
It will. And how ironic would that be since, the whole talk of the offseason, at least here, was first Jalen Brunson. And I think you were right. I think most fans were like, okay, we signed Jalen Brunson, good player. I would tell you what Reggie Miller said in a second last night. But when you think about the Knicks and Cavs, maybe, and, now facing off against Donovan Mitchell, and, one of the reasons why I think we didn't get Donovan Mitchell because we didn't want to include RJ into that trade. So RJ will probably have something to prove, no doubt. And I'm not sure what's wrong with him, by the way. We can certainly get into him later another time. Hopefully he gets he improves on where he's at right now. But um I think that'll be a lot of fun. Reggie Miller towards the game last night, the Mavs held on to beat the Sixers. But I think the Mavs were up by 27, and I think the Sixers cut it down to 4. When I turned to it, there were 5 minutes left, and I think the Mavs were up by 11. They were up by like 13 with like a minute and change, and the Sixers all of a sudden got a couple of steals, and next thing you knew, they were only down by 5 with about 30 seconds or so left, and they held on to win. But Reggie Miller during that time said that Jalen Brunson was the key to that team in terms of keeping things calm because they're a very helter-skelter team. Doncic is a really helter-skelter. He's a great player, great talent, but a helter-skelter type player. And you know what I realized? Kyrie is kind of the same type of player. And they don't really have a calming force there. I think Kyrie's going to have to play that role, for them. But I think that just I want to tie that back into the Knicks, and I think it just shows the improvement that Jalen Brunson has made. He was already a very good player, with Dallas, but he's a star now, and and I think it's taken the pressure off Julius Randle, and you're seeing Randle have his best season. It's really great to see it come together. I think Josh Hart, right? They haven't lost since they picked him up. He's just been a bundle of energy on the court, and the fans love him, and it's just really clicked. And back in early December, let's tie it back to Dallas real quick because you and I spoke the next day about that. Remember the game in Dallas when they lost that big lead and they wound up losing that game in overtime? What were the calls for?
Yeah.
What was the calls for Thibodeau? People were
Oh, it
saying,
was
yeah,
fire him.
yeah, absolutely. Now we're saying, hey, he might should be coach of the year. So it's amazing how up and down we can be. But it was right after that when he shortened the rotation and he benched Derrick Rose and he benched, Cam Reddish and Fournier was already a little bit out of the rotation, but he totally got out of the rotation and he cut it down to the 9 players. And since then they've just played spectacularly, So this is gonna be fun. It's been a long time for us.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Um, well, you mentioned Dallas. It is kind of interesting because yeah, they have a lot of talent, but it does kind of seem like there isn't like that calming presence of like, the team is like on an '08 type of run, and you got a guy that'll kind of settle everyone down and get like a very methodical basket just to kind of make everyone feel a little bit better. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Jalen Brunson kind of has that. There were
He
times where
does.
Julius Randle tried that, and then he would just get more frustrated.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, and I'm guilty of this just as much as anyone. I was saying they should trade Julius Randle to the Lakers, get rid of the contract.
Yeah.
Um, but I
Yeah.
mean, he was an All Star this year. He's been great.
Yeah. 2 out of the last 3 years has been an all-star. See, I never said trade Julius Randle. I'm gonna hold on to that. Because you and several other of our friends here were like, "Yeah, let's get rid of him." I'm like, "No." I was saying that maybe New York is not for him because he at times was very thin-skinned, but he just came out with a very different attitude this year. Um, I want to switch to Phoenix real quick. And what were your thoughts on Kevin Durant, 23 points, Devin Booker, 38 points? I mean, those are, I mean, two of the best players in the league right there. I know Chris Paul's been struggling a little bit, but I have a concern for Phoenix. I'll tell you in a second. But what were your thoughts on Kevin Durant's debut?
Honestly, I think it's what we expected from this trade.
Yeah,
Um, I mean, right now they are the 4 seed. They're 10 games back at Denver. I don't think they would. That's a lot of ground to make up
they're
with
not
not a lot
catching
of ton of time.
Yeah,
But it's like, and you always have this. There's always the team like, oh, when was the last time both number 1 seeds like were in the NBA Finals? Rarely happens anyway. But
yeah,
like the Suns, they could be the team that if they get healthy enough, um, Kevin Durant doesn't have the full pressure of trying to be just the only guy. I think you have a shot. Um, I think one of the concerns though is health. Kevin Durant isn't exactly the most healthy guy out there. Um, really, since he like tore his Achilles at the end of his Golden State career, he really hasn't stayed healthy for like a full season.
yeah,
I mean, like he's been out for what, a month.
yeah,
Also Chris Paul too. I think those are the two keys because like they they gave up a lot of their depth, and it when you do that, you can't afford another injury. Um, Also their defense might be a little shaky, but
yeah,
that's yeah.
yeah. I totally agree with everything you said. I don't think seeding is going to even matter for Phoenix. I think if they start to hit on all cylinders, um, they'll be fine. And whether they're number 4, number 3 seed, I don't think that'll matter who they play in the playoffs. They'll be a tough out. I could certainly see them getting to the finals. I have the one concern. I want to compare it to uh, when the Knicks traded most of their team for Carmelo, and they had some success, right? They had that the next year they had that 54 win season under Mike Woodson. That was probably the year you were talking about. But it was kind of short lived because I thought that they had traded all their depth. Same thing when the Nets traded for James Harden. They dealt away pretty much everybody. They've got one or two of them back now with Dinwiddie, but they didn't have the depth there. I after watching you saw me texting, this Cam Johnson, he's just one of these underrated players, man. I'm not sure why he doesn't play more. I think he had 30 some odd points against the Knicks, but he's just one of these special players. So is Bridges, so is Crowder. That's a lot of depth that they traded away. And one of the guys on TNT mentioned that that they felt like, hey, if, because Chris Paul and Kevin Durant have, a lot of mileage, on those legs, and they don't really have the depth there. You may not need it. I mean, these guys could go through the playoffs. I mean, you look at these are still 3 of the best players in the NBA, but I just, I worry about their depth. I hope this doesn't turn into because you know how I felt about Kevin. I've had a little bit of a love hate type of thing with Kevin Durant. I love what he does on the court, but he just needs to stay off Twitter. Um, but you know, can Phoenix get through a tough, 7 game series? I don't know, with Memphis, let's say, because Memphis is going to grind them out, and Memphis goes 9 deep, and obviously they have their star player. They have a couple of guys that are close, with Jackson and a few others there that are close to being stars as well. So despite you got Booker and Durant, do you have that depth to grind out? I mean, it's going to be fascinating to see. I would have made the trade too, though. I mean, what are you going to do? So,
Yeah. Well, and also like in the NBA, you need superstars.
yeah,
Like in other leagues, not as much. Like if
right,
let's say this was
yeah,
I don't know, let's say you're trading for Aaron Rodgers or Lamar Jackson, like giving up like 3 first round picks will hurt you in the long run.
yeah,
But a lot of times in the NBA, those 1st round picks, especially if you're decent, like okay, so the Nets have multiple 1st round picks from Phoenix, but Phoenix isn't going to be bad over the next few years anyway. So
no,
it's not like they're going to be picking like a lottery pick.
no,
Um, but you mentioned tough long series. Their first, like right now, the playoffs started today. Their 1st round series would be against Golden State, the defending
yeah,
champs. You got Steph Curry that's going to be back healthy. You got Klay Thompson. You got Draymond Green. It'll be interesting. Like I would love to see that because imagine the defensive battle of Draymond Green against Kevin Durant.
no,
Like that would be incredible.
that would must see TV. I mean, that would be. I'd have to stay up a little late a couple of nights there, man, because those games won't be on until 10 o'clock, Eastern time.
Yep.
Um, and so before we jump over to baseball, I know you wanted to talk real quick about the pitch clock thing. I'll just say that this might be a special spring again at Madison Square Garden where we haven't had that in a long time because the New York Rangers, we talk more about that next week, picking up Patrick Kane, who even I know him, and I'm a very, novice hockey fan. And he's a winner. I mean, winning a Stanley Cups in Chicago, and he's just one of these great players, and he's still only 34. So they didn't pick up somebody that's really on the downside of their career, and they made the other big trade a few weeks back. So I mean, I think the Rangers are going to make a lot of noise in the NHL playoffs, and won't that be fun if them and the Knicks are, one night it's the Knicks in the Garden, the next night the Rangers in the Garden. It'll take you back to the '90s for sure. So um,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, yeah. So looking forward to that. We'll talk a little bit more, maybe hockey, next week as that starts to get towards their playoffs as well. All right, you've got an interesting take on the pitch clock, and you wanted to share something. So now the games are shorter though, Ken, right? So far,
Yeah. Well, and that's what I kind of wanted to talk about.
yeah.
Like the they say the average spring training game last year was like just over 3 hours, like 3 hours and 2 minutes or something like that. The
Right.
average spring training game this spring training, obviously smaller sample size. We only got a week's worth of games. It's about 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Okay.
Um, it's like they've shaved off about 20 minutes off a game. Um, well, I'll start out with this. I don't know if other people have seen the clip of Wandy Peralta, who is quickly becoming one of my favorite bullpen guys to watch. Um,
Right.
he struck out a guy in 20 seconds. Um, he like and you watch the clip, he's got the ball basically the second he gets it, he sets back on the mound and is throwing it.
Yeah.
And like I think I at first with the pitch clock, I think it was like something I was like, oh, I don't know, because like baseball is all about not having the clock. But a few things that I've learned so far by like some of the research and listening to other people talk about it. On average, there's about 2 pitch clock violations in each game.
Oh,
And this
okay.
is the first week of being implemented in spring training.
Yeah.
Um, they said like in the minors, it was like towards the end of the season, there was about one every other game. Um, and I think this is something that like it'll be a very bone of contention for like the first like 3 or 4 years. But once everyone gets adjusted to it, you're probably not going to see a ton of it. Like you're not going to see the walking rain delay Steve Traxel or Nomar Garcia Parra going out and adjusting his gloves. Like I think
Yeah.
it'll add for a lot more like just action. And I
Yeah.
think someone had said it, I don't remember who. Like a lot of times when you're watching a baseball game, you can kind of have it on in the background and you're
Yeah.
like, well, I think something exciting will happen. But like with the pitch clock, with like action being more tightened up, it'll make it so that it's a lot more compelling to watch throughout the game too. So
Yeah. Yeah.
at first I was like, I don't know about it, but I think it'll be good.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how pitchers and hitters adjust to it. Um, and also like a lot of like the analytics. So like a lot of times like these guys are processing. So they're like, let's say you're talking about a batter stepping out of the batter's box. Okay, so he threw me a fastball here on 1-1. He typically goes next with a changeup. And like kind of doing that, but also having to do that now within like 10 seconds. It's gonna make it a lot more interesting. It's gonna be a
Yeah.
lot more reactionary as opposed to like trying to do everything right according to the analytics. So like a
Yeah.
lot more of like the natural talent will come out.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm liking it. I was hesitant at first because I'm like, one of the beauty parts of baseball for me is that there is no clock. That the game could last, 2.5 hours or 3.5 hours. I mean, but I would say you're right. There's a lot of lazy summer nights that even I, put on a Met game and it's kind of secondary to what I'm doing, and then, oh, okay, something just happened. Whereas that I think now and I haven't, I watched one or two games so far, but I was more engaged because it was moving, it was definitely, it was moving faster and I didn't want to miss anything. So I, I I was hesitant at first, but I think this is going to be good. I think that you get games down to an average of like 2.5 hours. I I think that you'll get younger people, engaged back in the game a little bit. Gary Sheffield Jr. I saw a quote from him that was pretty interesting. He said that baseball went out and they solicited and asked. They did a lot of focus groups across the country, but they asked a lot of people who really didn't watch baseball how it can improve, and they gave them, some of these things that they've done, and then he said those same people just go back to watching Netflix over the summer and not baseball. You know, so I thought that was pretty interesting, and maybe that's true or not. I have no idea, but I think it'll be fun to watch some of these changes. It really will. Go ahead.
Yeah, the other thing too, because like in our age now, I mean, what's the biggest thing that people do? Like literally the most viewed website the last couple of years was TikTok.
Yeah,
Like people like the short videos, people like the smaller clips. Like I know
yeah,
people binge watch Netflix, but also Netflix is kind of dying a little bit. People
yeah.
love the short stuff. So like shortening the game, people have very little attention spans nowadays. So
Yeah.
I think it'll be worth it.
Yeah, I do. I mean, and you look at typical football game is going to be about 3 hours, right? Sometimes it goes a little past that. Typical NBA game it's kind of rare that it goes to 3 hours. So, if you're comparing the sports, and again, baseball's been the national pastime, but it really hasn't for a long time. It's probably ours, and probably there's a lot of people across the country that feel that way too. But more people watch, a regular season NBA game than they do a regular season baseball game. I hate to say that. Is that if you put a Fox game on a Thursday night against, like let's just say last night, Mavericks and Sixers, more people are going to watch Mavericks and Sixers. And that wasn't the case, 25, 30, years ago, but certainly is the case now. We won't even talk about, a Thursday night NFL game or a Sunday night NFL game. Sunday night football is still the number one rated, number one most watched show on TV, Sunday night football. So, but baseball, I think, could still find that niche and find that way even in the lazy days of summer. That was interesting. If you haven't seen that clip, I did see that. That was really, really interesting with Juan Peralta. um, hey, our tagline is conversations at the intersection of sports and faith. And we love to also dive into issues that, cross cut across sports, right? And certainly impact our culture. And, you know, we're living in just some odd times where younger and younger, we see a lot of guns and stuff like that. And there's three stories in college, two of them college basketball and one in college football, that just are horrible stories because they also involve lives being lost. And let's dive into them. And I'm gonna really lean on you here, Kenny, to because you're of a much younger generation, and you live there in the inner city of Cleveland, and I just wonder why this gun culture that we have has kind of spilled over into sports. I mean, it's been for a while, but some of the stuff that's happened of recent, especially at Alabama and New Mexico State, has been kind of odd. But let's start first with Jalen Carter, right? And the story here at Georgia, which is enormously tragic. So you want to talk a little bit about that first, and then I want to get your opinion on what the heck could have caused this. This just tragic event.
Yeah, well, and we'll start with the fact that he was a projected top 5 draft pick this year.
He's a great college player. Yeah, he's not good.
Yeah,
He's a college player.
like he's a guy that like could change the way your defense looks. Like this is a
Yeah,
guy that can make a huge difference.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I don't know what it is. Um, so he was involved in like a crash that killed a teammate as well as a coach.
yeah,
After doing like a deeper investigation, because like originally they said like when the car crash happened, like the the guys that were killed, they were going at a high speed.
yeah,
But then it turns out that he was also racing them at a
yeah,
high speed,
yeah,
which like I understand that there's some aspect of people like just like gunning it for the fun of it, like, but it's also so dangerous. Um, because like at this point now he can be charged with probably vehicular manslaughter. I don't know. No charges have actually been like, as far as
yeah.
I know, no charges have been filed. But
No,
like even just being,
he turned himself in. There's so far it's just reckless endangerment. There's two misdemeanor charges right now, but the investigation's ongoing. Remember now, he was at the NFL Combine, and he had
yeah,
to go turn himself in. And he's back at the NFL Combine now. So I want to definitely get to that whole thing as to what the heck. But go ahead, finish with the story. So they're racing. He's racing them. They crashed. Two people are killed, including a player, Devin Willock, and Chandler LaCroix is the young lady that's killed, and she's a part of the coaching staff, part of the team staff. So go ahead, pick it up from there.
yeah. So I mean, you'd said he's at the combine. This all kind of comes down. He's like, well, all right, I gotta head back to Georgia to kind of deal with this. So like you look at it from a big picture perspective, this guy who like his draft stock was already high anyway, but like he could have like bumped himself up to potentially number 1 if the Bears keep the pick. Um, Definitely top 5 though. Like anyone could use a strong defensive lineman, like bottom line.
Mhm.
But now you wonder, like, because okay, 2 misdemeanors is probably not going to do much at if at all jail time. But there's still kind of the question of, well, is this guy gonna keep his nose clean? Um, but also that may not matter in the end. I mean, Baker Mayfield had some minor legal issues, like he never was arrested or anything like that. He always owned up to it, but that also didn't necessarily hurt his draft stock. Um, I think Thibodeau as well. He had some minor issues before getting drafted by the Giants. He wasn't really hurt that much either. Um, but I do wonder, because there's a lot. We'll talk about a couple more different stories. One of our recent interviews, I mentioned that whole NIL thing, name, image, likeness. I want because like I see it even with Shelby students at Notre Dame College, Division II. Like none of those football players are going to the NFL. None of the basketball players are going to be drafted by the Cavs or whoever.
Right.
Um, but like even with that, a lot of the student athletes, which there's a lot of student athletes at Notre Dame College, um, sometimes they act like they're like larger than life figures. That like they don't have to go to class, they don't have to do this, they don't have to do that. Um, and that's not with getting $1 million endorsement to be the spokesperson of Pepsi or to sell jerseys or to be a part of like the eventual college football video game that'll be revived because people loved it. So like
Well,
I can only imagine how like much more larger than life some of these football players at a Georgia or an Alabama are. And like kind of like what we talked about, like maybe there is a little bit of a like an 18-year-old probably can't handle that. Like I can't imagine having $1 million endorsement contract at 18 years old
right.
and then also like being able to just kind of feel like I can't do whatever I want because like they probably thought they were invincible. Like, oh, we can do whatever we want. We're players at Georgia. We're gonna be in the NFL. But maybe like, and I'm not saying any. I think NIL has very good things. I think like a lot of these bigger colleges profiting millions and millions and millions of dollars off of their players and them getting nothing's wrong. But also, kind of like our guest had said, like maybe there's the sense of you need to control what that looks like.
Yeah.
And not in a sense of like the NCAA has to put all these sanctions in place or anything like that. But like, I mean, everyone's dumb at 18, 19 years old. Like, you think you're on top of the world, and then like, if you don't get humbled, the world will humble you. God will humble you.
Yeah. No
So,
doubt. No doubt. That's a great point. And you can imagine how many jerseys, I think number 95, Jalen Carter probably, that probably sold with his likeness and with his jersey on it that he's now made some money on. And so there's a good and bad in that. Here's where I think I think it's obviously poor judgment, right? To be racing. And by the way, this all happened in the backdrop of right after they win the national championship, right after they have their parade. And so it goes from this euphoria to just this tragic, tragic thing happening. And and so what I think everybody now has an issue with, and why the police are going to look more into this, and of course there could be more serious charges, is that he left. He left the scene. He totally he comes back an hour and a half later, and he never says anything to anybody. It's through the investigation that they find out that they were racing. And so this is the part where I think NFL teams may pause because that's a character issue. And I don't know, man. I guess you still got to look out for your career, but he's back at the NFL Combine now. So I can't imagine, I'm sure probably a lawyer or someone from the school called him and said, listen, they're getting ready to bring charges against you and going to arrest you, and they'll arrest you here unless you go and turn yourself in. So he goes, like you said, back to Georgia, turns himself in. But then after that, after he gets, arrested and everything and processed, whatever that looks like, bail, he goes back to the combine. And so this all seems to me of, of a character that, okay, I'm just gonna flee from stuff, and just make like it kind of didn't happen. And again, there's two families involved here, of lives lost, very, very young lives lost. And so, listen, I think that, face the consequences. We were racing. I really messed up. I should not have done that. And I can't imagine what now he's gonna have to live with the rest of his life, on that. But you got to face that though. And I think that's what the teams will probably be a little hesitant on. Is this guy going to be straightforward? Let's jump to the Alabama situation, because this one is fascinating on all levels. I'll tell it real quick, and then I want to hear your opinion. So we've got the best freshman in the nation. Definitely will play in the NBA, or should play in the NBA if everything goes okay, and that's Brandon Miller. And Alabama, it's not enough that they dominate football. Now they're a Final Four team, the way they're constructed right now. But but there's some cracks here, right? Because you have one of their players, Darius Miles. And by the way, Brandon Miller is averaging under 20 points a game, 19.6, and he's averaging over 8 rebounds a game. The guy's a walking double double. He's not by far, but he is definitely the best freshman in the nation, no doubt. Could win even the John Wooden Award. He's one of the best players in the nation as well. All of that really shouldn't matter, but it seems like it does because he gets a text from someone that asks him to return Darius's gun to him. Now, what's he doing with Darius? Darius Miles is a player. He's a bench player on the Alabama team, and so now Darius Miles, Miller returns Darius' gun to him, and there's another guy involved here. I'm just going to want to look it up. I think his last name is Reeves. There's another guy involved there. No, I'm sorry, Michael Davis. He gets into an argument, and I want to say her name, Jamia Harris. She's 23 years old, young mother. He gets into an argument. Miles is definitely there at the scene. Supposedly Miller is there, or maybe not. Not 100% sure on that just yet. But certainly Miller, there's text messages that show he gave the gun back. An argument ensues, and Davis is the one that actually shoots Harris. Now, as soon as Miles is arrested, he's off the team, period. Miller, even though he has some involvement in this, continues to play. He misses one game, but then they bring him right back. Nate Oates is the coach. I really honestly never heard of him. But I know who the coach was before, right? It was Avery Johnson was the coach there before Oates, but he takes over the program, and it's almost like he's tone deaf to this whole thing. He doesn't understand even why reporters are asking. I'm sorry, is he still playing because he's one of the best players in the country? And if you lose him, you're definitely not going to the Final Four, without him. Or is he playing because you think he's just innocent or whatever? And he's incredulous to even hear these questions. So I want to add this in real quick because this made obviously the news over the weekend. Apparently, they have been doing this all year. Teams will have their little routine, like LeBron James does his powder in the hand and throws his hands up, and this you and I used to have our own little secret handshake and stuff like that. Their thing was they would pat the players down like the police would. Now, you would think that after something like this happened on the team, and this is during, with introductions, they have one guy standing there as they're coming and he pats them down. Okay, so they were doing that before. It's a silly routine to me, but okay. After all this happened, Kenny, they were still doing it. And so, they're in a nationally televised game this past weekend, and it finally came to light. They're like, wait a second, one of the announcers is like, what? Was that a pat down after one guy is accused of capital murder and the other guy is possibly handed the gun over to these guys that actually did the killing of this 23-year-old mother. This is why it's really tragic, man. It's human life involved. Goes way beyond basketball. And so the coach again is tone deaf to it. He says, well, we've been doing that all year. And so he says, we're not going to do it anymore. I mean, you couldn't stop that? Like right after all of this stuff happened. It's an amazing story. And again, Alabama's not used to basketball success. I mean, they've been okay in basketball. They've gotten into the tournament most years and make a little noise. I'd be curious. We'd have to look that up when the last time the basketball team, if ever, went to the Final Four, but I don't remember them, going. But this whole story is just crazy. And again, this just easing of gun. So I'm asking myself, what is Brandon Miller doing at Darius Miles's gun? Hey, can I borrow your gun? I guess, yeah, hey, can I borrow your car? Can I borrow your sneakers? So like, can I borrow your gun? What's he doing with it? And now what role does he play here? We don't know that yet. But I gotta tell you, definitively, in my opinion, he should not have been playing until they sort everything out. And he's continued to play. So anyway, that's kind of that story. I'm really anxious to hear what your opinion is.
Well, first, reason why I'm hesitating here. So where are you? Okay. So I do have, they've never made the Final Four, but they have made the Elite Eight.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, back in 2004.
yeah,
And I'm looking at this roster and I know nobody on this roster.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Um, anyhow, um, there's so many things at play. Obviously, like first is the whole like why do you have a gun and why are you bringing a gun to this type of a confrontation? Um, because like there's the because I know there's a little bit of like the dispute of like was he like who shot first? Really, to me, that doesn't matter because okay, so if you can try to claim self-defense, but like it's really hard to claim that when the other person is dead and there's no other like witnesses or anything. But
yeah.
like to me, if someone says, "Hey, get me that gun. Things are getting hot," your first instinct should be, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, what's happening? Like let's talk about this first."
Yeah,
Um and like I don't know, it just kind of seems very like where is the leader for this person? Where is the leader for him? Like where is like that mentor that can kind of say like, "Hey, like chill out." Um
yeah,
I feel like I keep going back to our conversation that we had yesterday. Like
yeah,
where's like the man in this guy's life that can kind of be like, "All right, well let's let calmer heads prevail. Let's talk this through first." Um
yeah.
because like now you look at it, obviously like the young man, the bench player, I mean, he probably wasn't going to have a career as a bench player in Alabama anyway, but like he's kind of done. And also, kind of in the same way that we were talking about with the Georgia player, like, so yes, he might have been the best college freshman out there. Is an NBA team going to take a shot at him? I feel like in the NFL, you have guys that have questionable character, and they're more likely to take a risk on a guy like that as opposed to an NBA player. Like, oh gosh, I forgot his name. There was a guy that said a very anti-Semitic thing on a video game live stream.
Yes,
Was immediately kicked off. I think the Thunder, the Rockets, was like just out of the league for a while. It wasn't until like a year later, like recently, that he was picked
just
up again.
recently. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So like the NBA doesn't play with that.
yeah,
And if you're looking at it like you're whether or not you knew what was going on, whether or not you knew the circumstances, you still were an accomplice to a murder of a 23-year-old mother. Kind of like what you said, like that's something that anyone involved is going to have to live with for the rest of their lives. And
yeah.
I didn't know about the pat down thing. That to me is crazy. Like, first of all, I don't like that doing that to start out the season. Like, what's the purpose behind that? Like, I understand having like because every team has their routine. Like, I remember it was a big thing a couple of years ago when the Yankees, I think it was Nestor Cortez, got a turtle that kind of became like the team mascot, and they called him Bronxy. Like it was kind of like their thing, or like
Yeah,
they were doing like the throwing of gum at like a certain like they were trying to do like basketball or something like that. I don't know. Like every team kind of has their routine, or like the I remember the big thing with the Mets was when Bartolo Colon hit his home run, the legendary home run.
yeah,
And then all the team just like vacated the dugout. Like every team has their routine. Um, I'll rattle off a few more. The Red Sox with the home run laundry basket cart. The Orioles have like this big home run chain. Like
yeah.
that happens. But the pat down thing, first of all, I feel like there's a little bit of like a racial profiling there. We're talking about Alabama, and probably most, if not all, of these guys are not white. I kind of seems a little odd to me. But then also continuing to do it tells me that you're tone deaf. Like you that
Oh,
you really don't care what happens. And
yeah,
really like that coach seems to be totally out of touch with what's going on in the world. Because like if you're saying, "Oh yeah, well like this guy definitely should play," it's clear that you don't care what he did. You care that you're getting more money from him, and you care that your team is going to do well. Um,
yeah,
and I mean, I don't know. Alabama might make a run. I hope they don't. Like, this guy shouldn't be playing.
Well, and nobody has stepped in yet. And you talk about leadership, going back to the whole pat down thing. Okay, they started out. You're 100% right. Where's the coach after this happened? They did it for about 5 or 6 games after it happened, and it wasn't really questioned because the games weren't on national television, right? And finally, now when it's questioned, he says, "Oh yeah, we won't do it. They won't do it anymore." You didn't think that that was a bad idea? First of all, at the beginning of the season, right? But then after this happened, you didn't think that that was, wait a second, guys, come on, what are we doing here? You know, don't do that anymore. I mean, you're right. I don't, again, I don't know the coach, I don't know the circumstances, but I'll say this, in my opinion, he shouldn't be playing right now. Sort it out. Let get to the bottom of it. Let the police get to the bottom of this. And okay, that was his only role. He had no idea that, um, that this was going to happen, whatever. And he probably didn't, because it seems like it was a kind of a spur of the moment because the guy is charged with second degree murder, not first degree. So could have been an argument that escalated, whatever. There's no excuse. But there's a 23-year-old mother that is dead. What about that family? Yeah, it's way bigger than basketball. I'll jump over to New Mexico State real quick, and then we'll wrap up with, I want your opinion on what are some solutions that uh, colleges and just society in general need to put in. It's a bigger, I mean, we could probably talk all day about gun violence, especially in the inner cities. So it's a bigger problem to solve, but it should be a little bit more controlled when you have all these young men under your control. Now you can't control everything they do off the court, or can you? So New Mexico State, the basketball program is shut down. This goes back to in the fall. There's a football game between New Mexico State, hot rivals. Fight breaks out, a brawl between the teams. One of the basketball players, Mike Peak, is on the sidelines, and he jumps into the brawl, is throwing punches. Right? Okay, gets in a little bit of hot water for that. Doesn't really miss any games or anything, but kind of gets warned. Now their coach is only in his first year. Poor guy got fired. His name is Greg Hare. I probably pronounced that wrong, but it's Heiar. Again, I never heard of him. I've heard of some of the coaches that have come out of New Mexico State. He's one that I haven't really heard of. Now, again, New Mexico State has always had, again, like Alabama, kind of moderate success and in college basketball. They've sent some good players to the NBA, but overall, they've just been an okay program, right? But consistent, right? It's a very unique part of the country. A lot of people like to go, to that college, beautiful part of the country as well. Um, anyway, so Peak, they don't know if this has to do with his role in this brawl anyway. Months later, a few months ago, he gets into these guys jump him, two or three guys jump him. Now he's broken curfew, so he shouldn't be where he's at. They're saying maybe some drugs were involved or something like that, but some guys jump him and he has a gun on him. He takes the gun out and he exchanges gunfire with another guy who had jumped him. So they're in this shootout. They both get shot and they both wind up in the hospital. So during this investigation now, other stuff comes out about the program, that apparently there was this really bad hazing incident where three players are now kind of accused of sexually assaulting another player during this hazing. I didn't know hazing was still a thing, but and especially to that level, on a basketball team. So now the athletic director, who's come under some fire himself, big news in that town because he's accused of having an affair with someone, and again, probably in a place like New York or even Cleveland, it wouldn't make any news, but it made big news there. But he takes some definitive action here. First thing he does, he fires the coach. He's like, what is going on here? You got players brawling, you got players shooting at, out breaking, curfew and firing off gunshots. And apparently there were a lot of other, not a lot, several other players that were at the scene when there was this gunfight. And then you have this hazing thing. What do you do? So he gets let go and he's not even finished his first year. And a day or two later, they shut the program down totally. They forfeit every game for the rest of the season. And who knows where it's going to go from there. And then listen, that's some really strong action by the athletic director. But essentially, he's saying, okay, this is not how it's going to go down. We're just not going to play. Period. And so again, college basketball big there because there's not much else that happens in that town where New Mexico State is at. So a big deal there, but he had to take some sort of action. And I hate to say, I agree with his action. Let's just take a time out here. Let's sort everything out. If we got to start all over again, let me go get a disciplinary coach in here and let's start the program back over and reset. I thought that was the right decision. But what are your thoughts, and how do we what are some practical things that colleges, especially these college athletic programs, can do to curb some of this gun violence that's going on?
Um, I'll start with some thoughts on. I think you nailed it. Like you got to hit the reset button. It's one thing to have an isolated incident with a couple players, but if you're talking about several players hazing and also sexually assaulting another player, you're talking about a very dangerous gunfire. We're talking like the shootout thing. Like, luckily, neither of these young people were killed. Like that could have easily happened. Um, like when you have all these different things, I think it's important to say like being a college athlete is not a right; it's a privilege,
Yep.
and you're not entitled to it. And I think it's important to say like, yeah, you aren't above taking a seat because also like a lot of these players, who knows what their academics were like, but losing out on the season probably also means that they lose out on a scholarship. It's very likely that a lot of these players are gone just because they can't afford, like, the tuition probably at New Mexico State is astronomical. I mean, probably they can probably get student loans and whatnot, but um it'll be very interesting to kind of see how they reset next year. Um as far as what to do moving forward, I think just having like discipline and sanctions won't work. I think like just saying like, well, these are the rules A, B, and C, it doesn't work. I think one of the biggest things as colleges continue to recruit players, especially players um with struggles, players that have more troubling backgrounds, instead of just being like, hey, like here, you go do your thing. Like I feel like the idea of mentorship needs to be in there. Have like a coach, especially coaches should probably more embrace, instead of just doing figuring out the X's and O's, is just being there for their players. Because like troubled background or not, like, and I'm not accusing all of these kids of being troubled backgrounds or all of them having like violent backgrounds in their history. Like, who knows? Doesn't matter. But regardless, if you're 18 and you're away from your family for the first time, it's hard.
Yeah.
Like the expectation of you kind of living on your own, like, yeah, every 18-year-old that heads to college loves that. But there's also a sense of like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And like the coaches and the athletic directors and all of the staff should kind of more embrace the idea of like wrapping their arms around each of these college athletes and showing them love. And I think that above anything else, and obviously I would love to say, yeah, like discipling them. But obviously, like a lot of these coaches might not necessarily be Christians. But like having that idea of not just showing them basketball, but showing them how life works is going to make a tremendous difference. Because like I say it to our kids all the time here, like anytime they get mad, oh well, I'll just punch them right in the face. Well, that's fine in school. Maybe you'll still get suspended, but like in life, if you punch someone in the face, you're gonna get charged with assault. Like bottom line. So I think having that person there that can help mentor them will make a huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. We'll break this down a little bit more next week and we'll keep an eye on, especially as the Alabama story, all three of these stories I think will unfold. We probably won't hear much about New Mexico State until next year, but The Georgia story and the Alabama story. I definitely want to dive back into it. All right, real quick, we got some inspiration, right? I'll go first because I'll be real quick. I'm inspired by Michael Conforto. I loved him as a Met. I hate how everything happened with him. I have no idea what his faith is about, but I saw an article on how I didn't realize how much he went through with his shoulder because that was the second time that had happened to him, and all the uncertainty about going into free agency, his relationship with Chili Davis, which was great. And when the Mets lost him as a coach, when the Mets let him go, how his game just like went down, and because not just because of the hints and tips that he gave, he was emotionally connected to him, and he definitely went through a lot when the Mets let him go. But he kicked the tires on coming back to the Mets. The Mets kind of kicked the tires on that, but he really wanted a fresh start. He lives in the Seattle area, or he's from the Seattle area. I thought the Mariners would have been an ideal fit for him, but it turns out the Giants, certainly after losing Aaron Judge, they had to and Correa, they had to do something. And I think Conforto is going to fit in well there if healthy. And I think now you have obviously the DH, so that'll certainly help with his shoulder. But I want to see him just have a big bounce back year and come back. Michael Conforto, definitely my inspiration this week. What you got, man?
Yeah, so I saw a story. I'll make this quick as well. The Braves were looking for a new public address announcer. Um, so when they had selected the guy, they had told him he only has to do one more thing. He has to announce Spencer Strider, how he would do it. So as he's doing this is on a Zoom call. Spencer Strider then joins and then congratulates him for being the new public address announcer. Guy is bawling. I think it's a really fun story to just kind of like, I think it's just a fun way to show like someone that they're hired. Like,
Yeah.
obviously you can't do that in every situation, but I think it's just really cool. I like the way they did that.
You sent me that video. If you haven't seen that, just Google that. What is it? Braves PA announcer hire or something like that. New Braves
Yeah.
PA hire. It is. You will both laugh and cry. It is just so inspirational. I love that. That was great. All right, bud. Take us home,
All right. This is Kenny Squared N
Kenny.
with Sports on the Positive Tip. We will see you guys next week.
Absolutely.